We often associate the Victorian era with grand architecture, lavish fashions, and strict societal norms. But there are some other things that are less glamorous. Infant mortality was dangerously high, with more than 15% of all newborns who didn't make it to their first birthday. Many risks are well known today, but back then, what couldn't be seen wasn't believed to be a problem, though we know better now. Women began to be judged in society if too many of their children died in infancy. Queen Victoria had 9 children who survived to adulthood, and the blossoming baby science started to open up topics that had previously gone unsaid. The Victorian era brought innovation and inventions that were aimed at helping women make certain time-consuming tasks easier. And one of those inventions was aimed at helping women was the first baby bottle to help women who either couldn't breastfeed or were too busy to, marketed as Mummy's Little Helper. They were designed to be so easy that a baby could feed themselves, and up until that time, breastfeeding was a primary method for infant nutrition. But there were women who couldn't for a variety of reasons. Baby bottles started to become incredibly popular and had a high demand. And when the hugely influential book, Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management, covered the topic of rearing by hand, otherwise known as bottle feeding, further demand skyrocketed. Bottle feeding was seen as more refined, and for years, aristocratic women didn't breastfeed their children. Instead, they were passed off to wet nurses, and with the influx of the English middle class, bottles were a perfect solution. The Victorian era clothing hadn't been made with breastfeeding in mind. The styles often featured high necklines, corsets, and many layers, making it very difficult to breastfeed multiple times per day. However, the design of these bottles began to plague homes, and it was largely unknown why a lot of babies were experiencing very severe health issues, and it would take years for doctors to put 2 and 2 together. The bottles were glass and designed for little hands to hold, so they were a slanted shape. First and foremost, it makes the bottles impossible to clean well because of the narrow opening and odd shape. Then the bottles had rubber tubing and a rubber stopper, and again these materials were very difficult to clean, and the rubber was porous. Basically, these materials were a sponge for bacteria, a sponge that was served to little infants multiple times per day. And oftentimes, siblings or other infants in the same household would share one bottle, so further diseases were passed back and forth, and households started experiencing massive increases in contagious diseases like typhoid fever and dysentery. Another problem with the tubing and the nipple materials is that they would naturally deteriorate with use, and then they would become a choking hazard. Mothers were even discouraged from washing the tubing and nipples because it would cause the pieces to deteriorate more quickly. They were instead advised to use it until it fell apart and then purchase new ones. In addition to the bottles themselves having a multitude of hazards, breast milk was also replaced with either cow milk or an early adaptation of infant formula, which was a raw flour-based liquid. Cow's milk was a problem because at the time milk wasn't pasteurized, and the health of the cow determined the health of the milk. And while adult bodies were better adapted to handling foodborne illnesses, babies' bodies were ill-equipped. Foodborne illness could cause an infant's death in under 48 hours. The bottles eventually earned the nickname murder bottles, and in 1897 outright bans of the bottles began after almost 50 years on the market. During their time in use, infant mortality doubled, with almost 30% of all infants never making it to childhood. In 1894, the bottles were replaced with a much safer banana bottle design, and didn't have any tubing and instead had a glass bottle with 2 openings. The newer style was much easier to clean, and without any of the porous rubber piping. However, the murder bottles were still manufactured until 1920s. It is unknown how many infants were killed by murder bottles, but the estimation is in the thousands. As we reflect on the Victorian era, it's important to recognize that not all aspects of the time were as idyllic as they may seem in hindsight. Baby bottles of that era, while innovative at the time, posed significant dangers for infants due to their materials, lack of sterilization practices, and subpar design. Thankfully, our understanding of infant care and technology has come a long way since then, leading to safer and more effective ways of nourishing and nurturing our little ones. The evolution of baby bottles is a testament to our ongoing commitment to improving the health and well-being for future generations. Want more dark tales? Dive into our previous episodes and get lost in the stories we've unearthed. If today's episode sparked your curiosity, let us know. Leave a comment down below, share your thoughts, and give this video a thumbs up. Sharing our content helps others embark on this historical journey too. Until next time, continue to seek the stories that time has whispered. This is Grim Histories, signing off.